or not. So let's have a look at some frameworks and a couple of tips in terms of how we can all improve our active listening. So I found this one, and I kind of like this nice, simple 3-step approach. So the first one, which I must admit I'm not very good at, is silence. And this is being quiet. So when I first did this activity as a participant in a workshop, I had to really think about not saying anything. And I think this is a really important skill for active listening, is to let people talk and not to jump in. So I've noticed certainly when I'm a mentor and also when I'm a coach, I tend to jump in too much because I'm trying to fix something for somebody. And actually, if I don't do that, they open up a lot more. They go a lot kind of deeper in terms of what they want to say to me. So being silent is a very good tactic to use for active listening. The second one is overall perception. So this is about getting as much information from the other person as possible without at the same time thinking about what you're going to say or how this is going to impact the advice that you're going to give them. Yeah. So as they're talking, you're just trying to make sense of what they're saying, and then give yourself time to digest that information and then give them some advice and guidance. It's just totally natural for your human brain to try and make these connections and bridge these gaps as you're listening to somebody, right? So overall perception is really important, that you get that overall understanding. And the last one is speaking, and I'll give you a couple of tips in a second on how to use speaking. So this is about reframing what they've said, like you just did in that activity. So reframing what they've said, making sure you've understood it correctly. So I often use the phrase, you know, if I've understood you correctly, what you're saying to me is blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And sometimes I've got it wrong, right? I've not understood them correctly. And we have to go through another series of active listening so I can try and figure out what they mean. Sometimes it's that they haven't articulated it because they don't really fully understand what they're trying to say. So it's a kind of little bit of a back and forth at this point. So speaking is used to reinforce your own understanding of this point, this overall perception of what they're saying. Yeah. So I found a really useful article, and I just kind of brought out a couple of tips from that. I'm sure lots of you are doing this already, but I think there's no harm in recapping on this. But a couple of things that we can do to improve our active listening. So the first one is watching your body language. So, you know, having eye contact and leaning forward. So I'm, without realizing I'm doing it, leaning forward right now that I'm speaking to you. Maintaining eye contact so that you can really concentrate on what they're saying. I'd love to hear from anybody who's tried to do this when somebody doesn't want to make eye contact with you. Yeah, I've got somebody that I work with who likes to talk whilst if they're thinking about the past, they look off to the left-hand side. If they're thinking about what they're going to do in the future, they look up to the right, but they don't really look at me. So I'm trying to maintain eye contact with them, but they're not. They're in a whole nother world, but that works okay for them. Encourage the speaker to continue. So go on, or just nodding. So this is where the being quiet and not actually saying too much helps them to go a little bit deeper. Being aware of your personal biases, so anything that might influence your listening. Now, I think I've noticed myself doing this in a professional capacity, but I definitely noticed myself doing it with my children. So when they start saying something, I'm thinking, oh, they're going to ask for a takeaway, or they're going to ask to stay up later this evening. And I've already decided what the end of their conversation is before they've even said anything. And my son, who's 14, pulled me up on this twice now. He's like, don't decide what I'm going to say before I say it. Yeah, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. So it's very, very easy to do that one. And remaining open-minded, I think, is probably linked to that other one, is try not to think about it from your point of view, try and think about it from the speaker's perspective. So try and be with them where they are, where they're talking about it from. And be patient to allow them to express their thoughts and feelings. As I say, sometimes they can't articulate it, and it takes them a while to kind of work it through in their brain in terms of what they're trying to say to you. Be mindful of your attitude. So if you're kind of being impatient and wanting them to hurry up, or looking at your watch, or all that sort of stuff, you know, obviously that's not conducive to them feeling safe and that they can trust you. And this, I think, is written just for me. So resist the urge to dish out any advice during the conversation. Yeah, just be quiet. Just listen to exactly what they're saying. Let them get to the end of what it is that they're saying. And then you can take a pause and reflect on what they've said. slow down your speech. So speaking quickly might prevent you from understanding what they're doing. So when you're going back to them and reframing things, if you speak really slowly, then it might allow you to fully kind of absorb what they've said properly. And then the last one, avoid multitasking. I think we all know that. So it's difficult, isn't it, to listen properly when you're checking your emails and doing everything else. So this, I think, is a nice framework to kind of sum up some of that. So it's got kind of 3 main stages. So mirror, validate, and empathize. So mirroring, which actually I learned about in my ICF accreditation course, is by just repeating back what the person says to you, just to really deepen that understanding. So what I'm hearing you say is X, Y, Z. It seems like you're saying blah, blah, blah. Or can I just check my understanding? Is that what you're struggling with is whatever. So all of those things are very non-judgmental. They're given from your perspective. It seems to me like you're saying this. Yeah, you're not saying what you're saying is, is hard or whatever. You're not doing that. You're just saying my understanding is this. So that's the first thing, is to mirror what they're saying to really clarify understanding. The second one is to validate it. And I think this links back to the first topic of creating trust. So it makes sense to me that you would feel that in that situation. Yeah, or I can understand why you think that. Or given what you're saying, or given the assumptions you're making, I think it's fair enough that would be frustrating. So you're not, I think this one's, there's a bit of a balance here. Yeah, you're not endorsing them to feel bad about something or give them reasons why they shouldn't be taking the next step, but you're just validating what they're feeling right now, whether you agree with it or not. Yeah, so it makes sense to me that you would be frustrated right now. Right, what are we going to do about that? Yeah. The last one is empathizing. So this is, again, you're not endorsing any sort of negative feelings that they're having necessarily, but you're saying, I've had that similar experience. So going back to trustworthiness, like when that happened to me, this is how I felt. Or if I was sat in your shoes, I often say that, if I was in your office doing that, I would be feeling this as well. So you're empathizing with them. So you're saying, I understand what you're saying. I get it. And this sort of leads me on to my other framework for active listening, which is all about the degree to which we're practicing active listening. So the kind of first level is repeating back, as we've said, just to make sure that you've understood what the person's saying. So you can use their words, which builds up the connection with them, and that deepens your understanding. The next level down is to paraphrase. So don't use exactly what they said, but use your words, or similar words to the ones that the speaker's using, to come up with it in a different kind of arrangement or a different order. And then the next level down, so this is like really in-depth active listening, is you've repeated back to them, you've paraphrased, and then you reflect on your own experience and how you can link that to what your mentee's going through. So if we flip this around from the mentee's perspective, what they're getting is, right, so in the repetition, this person understands what I'm saying. Yeah. In the paraphrasing, right, they're validating what I'm feeling and what I'm going through at the moment. And then reflecting, you're building up, oh, this person's gone through it as well. That's really interesting. I wonder how they went through it. Or, often I'll say with my coaching clients, I had another client that had a similar challenge, and this is what happened with them. So you're sort of reflecting back to them how other people might have gone through a similar experience. So talking about listening at different levels of active listening and listening with empathy, I hope you guys are all familiar with Brené Brown. Yeah, I see a couple of nods. I just want to share this very short video with you. This is about listening with empathy, which I think is very similar to active listening. I thought this would be appropriate for our topic today. So let me know if you can't hear it. I'm going to play the video now.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
There you go. I love that video. I just think it's really nice in terms of like building an authentic connection with somebody through really listening to what they're saying rather than trying to, fix their problems or just tell them what to do. So I just wanted to share that example with you. Okay, so last 10 minutes, I'm going to go through the third topic, which is questioning techniques. Now, hopefully I've got time to play this video. So this is from the director of Mindframe Connect. I don't know if you've heard of this guy before, but he's got some really interesting takes on 3 different models of questioning techniques. So I'm going to play the video. I need to just come out of the screen to do that. And then I'm just going to pick out on 2 of them that I think are relevant for the mentor-mentee relationship, and we kind of pick those 2 apart. Okay, so it's here. Okay, can you see that okay? Oh, is it going to play? Come.
One of the things that I talk a lot about with mentors is the power of questions. How, as leaders, we often underestimate just how valuable it is to become a question engine for other people. When we ask a question, they get to dig deep and organize what they find and actually think things through themselves. Ultimately, those are the thoughts that they're going to take action on. So I can give somebody advice all day long, but if I can become masterful at crafting questions for people, it stirs that ownership inside them. One of the things that's helpful that we use with mentors is something called the HELI model. Now, the HELI model is an acronym, so that's nice. It's easy to remember, but what's even more important is that it's a metaphor. A good conversation like this, to me, feels like I'm in a helicopter with somebody. And I can do things in a helicopter and take it into different territories that a normal kind of conversation doesn't offer. H stands for horizon. And it refers to taking people out into the future to different time horizons. Maybe some of those time horizons are short. What would you like coming out of this conversation 45 minutes from now? What does it look like a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now? This concept of being able to take people out to different time horizons, landing the helicopter at those time horizons, getting out of the helicopter and looking around and asking people some questions after they've described what it is that they are actually trying to create, to ask them what it feels like to be at that future point. Because the part of our brain that sets goals uses language. It's important. It intellectually crafts out what we're trying to accomplish. But the part of our brain where motivation lives doesn't use language. It feels things. It senses things. It sees things. So if I want to make the entrepreneurs that I'm working with hungry to create what it is that they're trying to build, I have to take them out to the future, to a time horizon where they can see and feel what it is that they're trying to create. Questions like, what do you want to build? Why do you want to build it? What does good look like? What does great look like? All of those questions inside the helicopter take people out to those future time horizons. Another nice maneuver in the heli model is around E, which stands for existential scan. Existential is a good word because this is about what exists today. Existential also taps into what's really going on inside. So in the metaphor, what we do now is we bring our helicopter back and just hover it over the current situation. Helicopters are great because they have those nice little windows by your feet and you can look straight down and take an inventory of the current situation. What are the dynamics at play? What of those dynamics are going to make things easy? What of those dynamics are going to make things difficult? Just taking stock, asking people the kinds of questions that they need to answer to just know what it is that they are really in right now. That is obviously where the story starts going forwards. L stands for latitude. What are all of the different ways that we could move from where we are today to those time horizons in the future? What are the chances to be creative? Who are the people or the resources that we need to bring into the picture to actually start to make this story happen? And I is about asking questions that drive initiative. What will you now do because we've had this conversation? By when are each of those key steps going to be done? This is about helping somebody find the right action, exactly what needs to be initiated to get some traction in the situation. The heli model is not prescriptive. It's not in any particular order. Those are 4 territories that you can take the conversation with different kinds of questions to help people think more strategically and to make the best use of the time and the energy that they have.
Okay. You like that? Like the heli model? Oh yeah, a couple of people nodding. I really resonate with that. I think it's a really useful way to look at, you know, a professional relationship and how you can really guide somebody by looking at that overview, looking at where they are now, where they want to be, and getting them to kind of think and feel in the right way. So I really like that model. The other 2 that he goes on to mention, and I think just cautious of time here, I'll go through them. So he also speaks about the Socratic model. I don't know if anyone's heard of this one. So this is about challenging kind of accuracy in a complete way of thinking so that you can move the mentee closer to their goal. So there's 3 main things really, and it's kind of similar to the heli model. So it's got conceptual questions. So using basic things like, tell me more. I want to know more about this. Can you give an example of what that means for you? So again, it's not just like, you know, where do you want to be? It's like, why is this important to you? So big conceptual questions. It's also then about using evidence-based questions. So dig into the reasoning. So if somebody says, oh, I really want to grow my business, but I don't think I can do that by 2024 for the following reasons, you can say, okay, so what evidence is there for those reasons? So what's made you think that? Do you know somebody else who's had those same challenges, to kind of benchmark against, you know, their biases or anything that's holding them back? And then the last one is to probe implications and consequences. So what would happen if this were the next step? So if you did this tomorrow, what would then happen? I use this a lot when I'm doing my marketing training, because like, oh yeah, I don't write content, it takes too long. I was like, well, what would happen if you just wrote 1 thing a day? What would be the next step after that? So you're saying about what would be the consequence of doing this 1 small step and then iterating after that. So that's the Socratic model. And then the last one is the YPO, so the Young Presidents Organization model. So I really like this. So it's about when you're questioning somebody to try and kind of get to help them more effectively, you know, have customized personal questions. So these big, broad questions of where do you want to be in 5 years, all those sorts of things, you know, they're not going to land with your mentee because they want it to be personal to them. So Also, it needs to hit them emotionally. We've heard that twice from Brené Brown, and then there from that last video. Just talking about it isn't going to move the needle. They need to really feel it in order to do something. Be acute and incisive, so get to the point, be as clear as you possibly can. And also try and keep coming back to what your understanding of what the mentee needs from you. So reverberancy here. And then innocent, so express genuine curiosity, which is no judgment, no bias, no influence. You're not expecting them to answer the question in any specific way. You don't know what the answer is going to be, but you're genuinely interested in them and what they're doing. And then the last one is explicit. So the more concise we can be to kind of get that person to open up and really share what their challenges are and help them, the better. So we should have, it says here, under 12 words, which is quite prescriptive, but we should be talking like 10-15% of the time, right? They should be talking the rest of the time to try to really go through what their challenges are, especially at the beginning of the relationship. Maybe as you move through, it'll become more 50-50, but definitely while you're getting to know them, they should be doing most of the talking. And then the last thing I wanted to mention in terms of asking questions is just about handling difficult situations. And there was a great article on LinkedIn. I'm just going to get you the link and put it in the chat now about how to handle mentor-mentee conflict. Here we go. I'm just going to pop it in the chat so you can take it from there. Okay, so you should all have that now. I thought it was really interesting. So we haven't got too much time left today to kind of delve into this in lots of detail, but they were taking us through a framework, in terms of questioning and managing the relationship and how you handle difficult situations. Because obviously it's all been very positive, but you can come across some more challenging situations with mentees. So it's saying about identifying the source of the conflict, communicating openly and calmly, trying to find something that works for the both of you, and then following up, not leaving it there, but following up to make sure that that's resolved. And then if it isn't, just kind of seeking some external support if you can. So in the last couple of minutes, it'd be wonderful if you could share in the chat just how you guys handle difficult questions or difficult conversations with your mentees, to see if we can take any of your tips and use them with us. And then as we're nearing 7 o'clock Singapore time, I'll wrap up then. But would love to hear how you guys handle difficult conversations and questions with your mentees. So anyone's got any good juicy tips, put them into the chat. Okay, so while you're doing that, I'm just going to summarize for today. So thank you. Hopefully you were actively listening for some of that. We went through 3 topics. So establishing trust, active listening, and questioning techniques. And all of these things are just, helping us get better and better at what we're doing so that we can really deepen that bond with the mentees and be as effective as we possibly can. If you've got any questions, reach out to me or Gina. I'd love you to connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to. It's Elizabeth Taylor. So based in Singapore, looks slightly more glamorous on my LinkedIn photo than I do today. But yeah, if you've got any questions, please just drop me a DM. And I said, this is a great article that I've put in the chat as well,